Test 1, test 2. Test 1, test 2. Sibilance. Sibilance.
think here.
Okay. Okay. I'm not sure if anyone can hear this, but hello everyone. Welcome to Melbourne CocoaHeads 178. Apologies for the presentation and AV quality tonight. Box AFK. So yeah, thank you for coming. In the spirit of reconciliation, Melbourne CocoaHeads acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respect to those of their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples today. Okay, tonight's talks with an action-packed night. I would normally sit there and get rid of my face at this point, but Pablo is starting off with dependencies you can depend on. Great title. Carlos Melvito, did I get that right? Right. Yep, okay. Sorry, man. Well, let's say designing 3D icons with Carlos, and then Alex Smith, kickstarting a bright idea. Well done, right. I'll let them fill you in. Looking forward to it. We've got a code of conduct here. Our community is dedicated, I'm not going to read it, but yeah. This meetup is governed by the code of conduct, which is at that URL down there. If you're being harassed or notice someone feels uncomfortable in a situation, let one of the organisers know. Myself, Marcelo, Tups, Baz, all you guys, yep. Great. Or on that website there's an anonymous form if you want to submit some sort of something. Let us know. Housekeeping. The toilets are out the door, past the elevators to the right, and that's the same place as the emergency exits. So hopefully we don't need to use that last one. Name tags, you all should have name tags. I'm moving along so I can get off stage here. If you've got questions during the presentation, don't raise your hand unless the presenter wants to engage. I'll let you know, but we'll leave the questions at the end because then it lets people online as well ask questions, and we'll bring a microphone around for you. You can also jump on the Melbourne Meetup Slack. Yes. Okay, great. Thank you to our sponsors, Mantle Group. Woo! And our silver sponsor, REA Group. Great work, REA Group. Some other events this month. Coding Night, Wednesday the 21st of August. Not next Wednesday, the Wednesday after. And yeah, it's an alcohol-free night. Bring your laptop, or if you want to learn how to code, just join, come along, and people will be programming around you, and you can chat to them and ask them questions. Tups is going to come up and say something about Coding Night. Good. Give it a hand for Tups.
This Pat's forgotten.
In front of the camera, buddy. In front of the camera.
So, at this month's Coding Night, we've got Luke Pearce from Billu coming. He's a career coach. So he'll be giving you some advice. We have a lot of people who are getting into the industry, so Pat might be getting out of the industry.
I forgot to put my microphone on.
If you're looking for career advice, career coaching, Luke Pearce will be, like I said, from Billu. We might put him in a breakout room or around the corner to answer questions and help anyone out. So we'll have more details about that in the coming week. Once we've gotten past tonight, we'll put it so people don't turn up tonight hoping for advice. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Tups. Okay.
I'll write a note for you next
Thank you. Yep. I needed a slide so I could go to it. All right. Sorry, online audience, if you haven't been able to hear me up until this point. Please, okay, great. Social night as well on the 27th of August. So that is at Saint and Rogue on 582 Little Collins, I think. Yep, great. Some other groups, there's Sydney CocoaHeads, GDG Melbourne, we sort of do some stuff with them. There's also this aunz.cocoaheads.social, and that's got all the CocoaHeads groups, sort of like meetup links and stuff around Australia and New Zealand. And then there is a event coming up called DevFest, which I remembered. And then, I was asked to, I think, share these links. One is to book tickets. I do not have the details, though. There is a DevFest coming up soon, but there's a request for speakers as well. So if you're interested, jump on those websites.
Mid-October, Saturday.
mid-October, Saturday-ish. Okay, great. Thank you for that, Tups. How to find us, melbournecocoaheads.com, Slack, and Mastodon. Great work. Here are some channels. We've got Melbourne Volunteers. Please help. Please help us. And then the jobs board if you're looking or hiring. And then the speakers channel. We're always looking for people to speak. If you've got like a lightning talk, something you've been working on, that's great. If you want to do something more in depth. It doesn't have to be specifically programming or iOS. But yeah, it's just anything's fine. Let's kick things off with Pablo first. Thank you so much, buddy. Dependencies you can depend on. Okay. I'm gonna give you that.
Yeah. So, should I go just on your... All right, thanks, Pat. Okay, so I'm here to talk to you about dependencies. So I'm not going to talk about what dependencies to use. This is a little bit more high level. You know, sort of the process of trying to select a dependency for your app. And it's a balancing act. And that's it. Now, I'm going to go more in depth. So I work for ANZ as an iOS engineer, but I also have my own app that I've been working on for a few years. This is basically a sort of a widget-based app which allows you to display various things from your HomeKit devices and, you know, create and configure widgets, lock screen widgets, Apple Watch, complications, etc., interactive widgets and whatnot. So it's on iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, and also Mac Catalyst. So yeah, let's kick it off. So dependencies nowadays, that's something that you really need, right? Like maybe in a very distant past, you could just build everything from the scratch, just, you know, get code everything, like think on the very old days, like the punching cards. But nowadays, that's impossible. It will be insane. So you do always depend on someone else's code. And that really brings a whole bunch of great advantages, right? Because it does help you to accelerate your development, writing your code. It helps you to reduce the complexity that you need to, you know, face when you're trying to do something new. Because you can focus at the problem at hand and maybe not be distracted and waste your time trying to get something working. If they're well written, they can help you to improve performance, and they can also help you to improve security and reliability, right? So think in any of the cryptographic libraries, right, or SSL. Nobody in their sane mind will try to implement them themselves. So things have been developed for years and years. But you notice that there are a few stars in there. That is because it's not all happy days, you know, everybody dancing and, you know, all stars and flowers. So they come also with a bit of a baggage. They can be a liability for you as well. And the same way they can help you, they can actually introduce vulnerabilities. They can reduce your performance when they're poorly written or if they are too heavy or they're doing too much. They can add complexity when they are too opinionated, and we're going to touch on that later. They can introduce bugs in your app, and they can even make it crash. But I never seen that in my life. I'm lying. I have seen it quite a few times. Anyone have issues with that? Yeah, so on. I remember back in the day, Facebook was one that brought our app down, the Facebook SDK. Yeah, so that definitely happens. So yeah, they access to everything you have in your app, right? So you need to be very careful to see what they accessing to. They could potentially share your even PII data. And to me, this summarizes everything. They take control of your own destiny, right? So what we do we use third-party libraries? How many do we use? We don't use them? Well, it depends. That's my managers and people that I had a lot of times when they ask me, how hard is to fix this? It depends. My wife also loves that when she asks me, can you fix this? Depends. So, yeah. Anyways, so it's actually a very delicate balance that you really want to achieve. So on one side, let's say you have infinite time, money, resources, you build everything yourself, you have full control. On the other side, you don't have control at all, you're just connecting and wiring things, just third-party code, and really bad things can happen. So we want to be, as anything in life, the sanity is in the middle. So I normally go about a process myself when I try to select any library. And what I do is I just go through a series of steps and just trying to, ask myself a bunch of questions. And that's what I want to sort of propose to you today. So first thing, before you want to add the library, there are a whole bunch of questions you need to ask yourself. After that, we go into research mode, right? We find different alternatives. We try to investigate each one, see if they make sense or not. And the final step, right before doing the final integrations, is just do like a test drive. See how it works. Quick integration. It will give you an opportunity to test a few things. And of course, things you might go into the previous step. If something doesn't work, you might pick a different library. So what we're going to be exploring in detail on this talk is each one of the steps. So before you add the library, the first question is, do you really need it? Maybe what you need to do is way too small. Maybe you're not understanding the problem. So it's always worth just to sit a little bit, understand what you need to do. Maybe the first Googling result, when you do just try to find, maybe it's not going to help you. So resist that impulse of saying, oh, I'm just going to get it quickly. Off I go. So that's very important. Also understanding the benefits and drawbacks, right? Because that decision is going to have consequences. And of course, trying to ponder on the risks that you are introducing. Sometimes it's just simple enough that you can just build it yourself. Like it's just been very famous cases. I don't know so much on the iOS community, but I remember one on the JavaScript community where there was, I think it was a library that was doing capitalizing or something like that with string, and it got removed and it brought down half of the web apps in the internet. And it's just something very simple. Why not you just build it yourself? It's a good opportunity to learn how to do it. And if you're working on a team, you can just socialize. Maybe someone has a few ideas how to do it. Of course, it's very important to try to understand how complex it's going to be, because you might end up going down a rabbit hole. So trying to do a good estimation, understanding if you will really be able to do it, is always a great idea. maybe the OS already offers a solution. How many times, you're just doubling up on stuff that is already provided by some of the frameworks that iOS offers. So it offers like a whole bunch of, like a plethora of toolkits and frameworks. So it's always a good idea just to stop and just have a look, see if there is anything we can use. They are very, very easy to integrate normally, and they maintain by Apple. And most of the cases, they ready for the latest version of the OS. So that's not going to be stopping you to adopt all the latest and greatest that it gets released. And of course, it has less chances of affect the size of your app, because it's all in many cases they are DYDL libraries that are already coming with the system. But you always need to consider any privacy implications. So once we've made the call, right, we need to find a library. It's not in the OS. I can't build it myself. So we start looking into different alternatives. So we want to know first that the library and the authors are reputable, and they have a whole bunch of good reputation in the internet, right? So we check the authors. We want to make sure that this library is widely used. There's maybe not something really new that not many people is using. If it's an open source, that's a plus, because we can then go and investigate all of the issues that have been opened. We can check stars on GitHub and see if they have frequent releases. Is it being maintained actively? Maybe it was just abandoned. So you don't want to have something like that. It's like a really bad decision, because then you sort of you have a baggage and, as I said, a nasty liability because it's forgotten. So make sure it supports new OS versions. Make sure also, if you happen to be tied to a minimum OS version, you also want to check that that works and that is supported. Excuse me. And also we want to check that is maintained and that we see frequent releases with clear, release notes. Do they use native technologies? How many of you is using some cross-platform stuff in here? No one? Okay. Look, I'm a big fan of native technologies. I respect that some people like and haven't had to use cross-platform, and I guess in a way it kind of applies also to cross-platform, right? But you really want to be talking on the same language that the OS provides in terms of when you're doing library, right? So I would say if you were using React Native, you kind of want to be talking the same language like JavaScript, right? In my case, my first preference is native, right? So you do want to keep that working, right? So UI libraries definitely make sure that they use all of the native and even the vanilla components, right? They might be drawing on themselves, maybe using core graphics and stuff like that. Yeah, that works, but you're losing all of the advantages of the vanilla control. So if, let's say, we got a new iOS 7 situation when all of the controls change, you need to now just run and just get the library updated and everything. Accessibility gets a lot easier, and also as it gives you a very uniform interface. Prefer that they are developed in Swift, right? Because the integration is going to be a lot easier. There's less chance that there are some performance issues. And if you're using CI/CD, it will integrate really easy, and it will integrate really easy with the platform as well. It will be easy to write unit tests and wrap it. So, is it too opinionated? I like to be opinionated, and I am opinionated. I don't like the libraries that I want to use to be too opinionated, because they clash with my opinions. And then we don't move, right? We can't work, right? Because when you have too many opinions on your app, it's just a mess. So we don't want that. So one of the main problems, if you have a library that is too opinionated, there is a really steep learning curve, a lot of work to trying to understand it. There are many places where things can go wrong because it gets too much in your app in many points. And of course, they might be requiring early initialization and just get the clause all over your app, right? That's something that you probably want to steer away if you can. How much control they take from you. So this is pretty much expanding on what I was saying before. Those sort of apps that initiate very early, they want to override default app lifecycle events, like things like background and foreground events, or take control of your task or operation, background task operations, notifications, tip links. That can be really, really dangerous because it's a recipe for nasty crashes along the way. So you always wanted to have it isolated in one place if you do really need to use a library, and make sure that you are in control of your app. Again, same thing for UI, right? You don't want a library that takes full control of presentation and stuff like that. You want to control that. And to me, this is something very important, right? Whatever access that library has, whatever access your app has, the library also has, right? So anything that is in your app, that, let's say, any PII that you're trying to access or any data you're storing, potentially that library can see it and potentially could share it. So it's very important to be aware of that. So if the library is open source, as I said, that's a big plus. You can check for whether they're doing swizzling, weird things, if they are overriding default behavior, whether they're trying to send some data to third parties. If they try to use any of the private APIs, you don't want to get in trouble with Apple because of a dependency you don't know what it's doing. Check if they're trying to persist data locally, what they're doing, are they encrypting, not encrypting, if they're trying to read the keychain, if they're just trying to access stuff you have stored in there. If you can see the code quality, that's also great. It sort of gives you an idea of how much care the author puts in it, like if they have tests and stuff like that. And checking the license is always very important, just to try to understand what is that you are subscribing to. If the library offers some support, it's important just to have a look, see if you might be able to take advantage of that. You might be able to pay for that if you're working for a company. Maybe you might be advising your managers to that, just to help to get that support that you might need eventually. So what sort of support channels, if they're responsive or not when you try to open issues on GitHub, if there is a community, if they are engaged, also how detailed they are on their release notes, because you get an idea of what's the engagement they have, and if there is a roadmap, right? Like what's the roadmap? If they're planning to deprecate and end of life that library, that's always not a good idea, as I said, to go with that. And of course, we want to know when there are upgrades. I think this is also a big important one. You need to think that when you have a privacy policy, you having a commitment with your clients, right? And if your library is breaking the privacy policy, you are breaking that commitment with your customers, right? So try to make sure you understand what's their privacy policy, how they store PII, if they do it, if they try to access it, and what data is being shared, things that I mentioned before, right? The data being encrypted. So at the end of the day, you don't want to have that sort of a liability being in your way. Okay, So once we have cleared out of the questions in terms of selecting the alternatives, we want to go now into running a bit of a spike. That's what I sort of call the test drive. So that gives you a more concrete idea, right? How, like, if they're telling the truth, if it integrates well, so you can look into security implications, maybe do scans. Some companies, they have like a proper security scan as part of the CI/CD, so you can just maybe create a quick branch, open a quick PR, and it will just give you a report. What's the integration method? Just try it. The complexity of the integration. So you might be reading all the documentation, but then you start finding into the nasty bits and pieces. Maybe it was really easy in the documentation, but then you start finding surprises along the way. Of course, if your app binary is gonna blow up, you definitely want to know it sooner than later. And it gives you the opportunity to write some tests, understand if there are memory leaks, if it has any performance issues or deadlocks. Okay, so when we are integrated, I personally prefer SPM. Many people still using CocoaPods, no, Cartridge. So yeah, definitely to me, I think that's kind of the standard now. So I tend to go with that. But then when you start writing your library, just using your library, the best way to go about it, in my opinion, is to wrap it and try to isolate it from the rest of the code in your app. So having some sort of a service that allows you to wrap that code and even maybe defining protocols that expose the functionality that it has, and then having a concrete service that access to that protocols that allows you to easily mock that and then have easy testing on that stuff. Again, if your library is doing early initialization, maybe what you want to do is you want to have some sort of a lazy initialization if it's possible. And if you are able to have some sort of remote switching or sort of flags and stuff like that, if you are able to have something that it can have a kill switch on that library, that is definitely a plus, because you might find yourself that your app is crashing because of your library. So it will save your life. Okay, so that's the end of it. So the conclusion. It's always very, very important to do your proper research, understand and go through different alternatives, understand the implications, what is what you're committing to and what is you getting into. And if you have a team, if you work with people, communication is really important. So just talk to people. Maybe they might just suggest you a different idea. I always think that the best work you can do, you do it in a team of people. Like, you might be working on your own, but that sort of a collective mind really helps to get really good results. If you're working in a team, socialize your decision. Communicate also what did you came into, because then otherwise people is going to run into surprises. And finally, you need to own your decision. Right now, you're the responsible. You're the person who integrated that. So you gotta monitor, see. If your app is on the App Store, if your personal app, just check, see if you have crashes. That's now you need to be responsible for your decision. And that's it.
Any questions from the audience?
Thanks, Pablo. It's less of a question and more of a comment. I find that a lot of the time that I try to import a library, I actually need like a feature specific from the library. And license permitting and being open source, I find it sometimes easier to just integrate the part of the code that I need in my app and maintain it myself. Yeah, I just find that that's important to think about if you can do that when you actually considering a library.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so definitely I think that's basically in the theme of, or in the idea of, can you build it yourself? It's kind of that, right? And I would prefer that. If you understand well and you have a good idea of what the code is doing, why not to do that if you just need that piece of code? Yeah.
Anyone else?
Have you had an horror story about integrating a library? If so, tell us. If not, yeah.
Look, back in the day when I was working for another company, as I said, we had to integrate the Facebook SDK because, business wanted to. And it's very hard to say no. Yeah, and that brought a lot of pain because you don't have 100% control of what is going on underneath. And especially when you get these nasty crashes, which in this case the Facebook SDK was just initializing on the app did finish launching, so you would just open the app and it would crash. So I think that's one of the worst sort of situations. Might have gotten better, I don't know, but I'm myself with my personal app, I try to steer away as much as I can from using third-party dependencies. Sometimes you do need to use them, right? And it's a legit reason why to, but yeah.
For example, actually, there was one scenario for us, right? Like, we use the SDKs, right? But the SDK wasn't our issue from app, like similar what happened to Facebook, right? But when we try to check the log, we can't find the log, or not their side can't find the log as well. How would you fix during that situations? Like, no one knows what it was the issue, because we know that we got the customer's feedback, right, telling that, hey, we got this crash. It's not look like crash, but the message is not sent, right? But they got the screenshot, and we can't resolve it because we are just using the SDKs, right? We are using the license, and we just provide the service to the customers. But there was no solution, and they also can't find, because we can't detect what time was the log is coming, because we can't get all the details from the SDK itself. How did you have similar issues?
I haven't found that often, but I think a best way about going about it is having a bit of telemetry in your app. So of course it might imply using a library, and you need to do your proper research, but having an idea of what's the flow that the users are trying to do and how they got themselves into that situation. And if you can reproduce something that also has helped me quite a bit in the past is, so Apple allows you to install profiles that enable certain login on your device. And then if you do a SIG diagnose and you look into the logs, device log, you can see more stuff that it might give you an idea of what is going on around, right? Like maybe a VPN, if you're using a VPN, maybe a VPN is just messing around with something. Maybe there's some weird networking traffic. Yeah.
Nice. Anything else? No? Okay, thank you, Pablo.
Thank you.
I'm gonna drink you though.
How do I plugged in? Hey, sick. Awesome. Wow, I haven't done a talk like this in ages, specifically about icon design. This is the first time I'm doing it. Hello, everyone. I'm Carlos. I'm a designer. I work at this little bank called ANZ. I also work for Mental Group, who's sponsoring for this place. But yeah, I've done some icons in the past. Maybe some of these are familiar. That one, my favorite one, that's Reveal. It's a really good Mac app for helping you inspect iOS applications. I've done some work for Sketch. I did some replacement icons. I used to build a Mac app. That's now defunct. And I did some icon work. I'm doing some freelance icon work as well across the community. And this one's for an app called RideStats. I believe the developer is here with us today. Speaking of, I want to focus my work on these icons. So this was an amazing opportunity for me to work on some exploring 3D icons. And it started out with just one icon, but then we decided to do, what if we just extended the set to have more than just one icon and have a library, a suite of multiple different app icons, or rather icons within the app. Yeah, I don't know. There's something about 3D icons that just really make it pop on the screen. And I'm going to show you how I designed these icons. For the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to focus on this icon right here. So the design goal we had was to come up with an icon for the Watch app, for the Watch app. And the constraints were it had to fit in a circle. It had to look really good on the watch. It was a tiny icon. And so we wanted to use an opportunity. Why we could just put like a flat image on a circle and call it a day. But we wanted to do more than that. So I decided to explore a bit of 3D with the icon. So how do you design a 3D icon? There are 5 steps. I'll walk you through how I went from start to finish for that watchOS app icon. So first one, I start with sketches. I go straight to the screen. And what I do is I sort of do a bit of back and forth with the client about how, what should the icon look like. I originally started off with there's this, I forgot what the device is called, but it sort of helps you measure and track a cycling computer, I suppose. And you put it on the sort of your handlebars of your bike, and it tells you your distance and how you're going with your bike journey. And we wanted to sort of put that and hero that idea of a device on the watchOS app icon. Trouble is, we could put a square in there, and it's hard to know what that means. Maybe we could add a little path. The whole idea of the app was it's about statistics. So we drew a little graph here just to show that it's collecting stats. And just to give it a bit more of an idea about how it's tracking your journey, we decided to add a sort of location arrow. And that's sort of the starting point. There was a couple of iterations. I'm just cleaned it up here into this really simple glyph. And then now that we've got the basics, I decided to explore colors. What does it look like once I start to add a bit of color, give it a bit of layers? So the middle there is supposed to be like the bike computer in the shape of an Apple Watch. And then you've got the stats, so it's much sharp on the purple background. And the idea is you could sort of see your path on the GPS, but it kind of lines up with the statistic in the back. Now that we've got the colors up and ready, let's add a bit of style. So this is just adding some like gradients, adding some shadows to the colors and shapes that we have here. From afar, it already looks 3D, but wouldn't it be cool if we added a bit more detail so that when we decide to blow up the image and put it elsewhere that isn't just the watchOS app, you could sort of see a bit more, a bit more extra character. So the next step is turning what we've got there into something that's more like a 3D scene. So a bit about 3D, how does that work? I use an app called Blender, And how it works is, it's sort of like a bit of like a stage here, really. And the idea is you're given like a blank stage, a 3D scene, and then whatever you want to decide to put in that scene, you have to model. So you have to put in an object in that scene, and then you have to adjust the lights, and that will determine what it looks like. So for example, someone here in the front row may see this table over here. You can sort of see the lights coming down on it, you got some shadow, and then someone in the front row can sort of see that there's some shadow pointing that way because the light is facing that way. Now, what you could sort of imagine what it would look like if I decided to move the lights that way, the shadows would move. That's sort of the first part of setting up a 3D, like drawing a 3D icon. That's what it looks like in Blender. It's a bit complex. It's a really crazy learning curve, but there's this really popular tutorial that shows you how to draw a donut, which some of you may have probably already seen. But this is how I set up my scene for designing 3D icons. This right here, that's the camera. So that's like, what does the camera see? So this is the plane. This is like the stage. I've got a camera pointing downwards. Just imagine the camera's like that vent over there. I've got two lights, somewhere here and then somewhere there, sort of like one of these lights. And the idea is, now that I've got my stage set up, I can put whatever object I want designed in this area. This is sort of what it looks like from the camera's perspective. So that thing pointing downward, imagine if you put a camera where that was and you're looking down at the object, that's sort of what it looks like. And for whoever designed the icon, that's sort of like the end result. So you can imagine if I was designing a watch icon, which is sort of this circle here, the camera up there, the image that the camera see would be a circle and whatever we designed here. Next is modeling. So it's actually putting stuff in the scene. What does that look like? I do something a bit different to how maybe the 3D modeling community would do it. I do a bit of a hack. What I do is, from my design file, I export my shapes as SVGs. What's really cool about Blender is you can import SVGs. So what I'm actually doing is I'm importing flat objects into a 3D world. Of course, when you put a flat object in a 3D world, it won't look 3D. It's just like this top part of this table. But when you put the camera above it, it sort of looks like what we're looking for. The goal is to turn these flat objects into something 3D. So I don't have to like draw a circle from scratch. I don't have to figure out how to draw this in Blender. I just throw the shapes in that my 2D drawing tool can already do really well. If we decide to tilt the camera, this is sort of what it looks like. So if I move the camera from here to here, you can see they're just like a bunch of flat objects stacked on top of each other. So the goal, let's give it some depth. So let's start with the bike computer here. So it's a flat shape. Now what I do is I extrude it within Blender. So there's an option on the sidebar that allows you to like give it depth. Then what I do is, in order to make that indent where that sort of like screen goes, I duplicate the object, make it slightly smaller, and I push it down into the big object, to the object. Then, if you know Boolean operations, subtract, and bam, we've got like a nice little tray-looking thing. And if viewed from the top, it looks like our computer, and it's got depth. If we turn it to the side with the camera, it looks like this. It's looking pretty good already. It's quite nice. And then let's just change the color of that SVG to the black that we had earlier. And even just with a few things of like extruding the object and putting something in to push that well in, it kind of looks pretty good already as a 3D object. And that's just the base of that's just one element. Now you can start to see how that applies with all the other elements in the scene. So if you remember that flat disk, what I did was I extruded it, maybe gave it a bit of a round edge. We've done this already. This one was fun. It was a flat object, but what I did was I extruded it, and then I gave it, there were 3 points in the arrow. What I did was I clicked the middle dot and then raised that slightly higher. So it kind of looks like it's pointing downwards. So it's kind of looking like a triangle like that. So you don't just have to extrude it, you can sort of just like change the way it looks in Blender or in the whatever 3D software tool you use. And then if we look at it from the top down again, it's looking pretty good. It's looking pretty good for a 3D scene, which is quite nice. And this is just the shapes we started earlier, just extruded. And that's a bit about modeling. The next step is giving it some texture. That's adding materials. So this is what that looks like. Okay, so this is our watch disk. Imagine this again. And if you remember our icon from earlier, just we go back to our original concepts. It had this sort of like purple color with like a line over it and some kind of gradient. How am I going to do that in Blender? Well, I don't have to. What I can do is I can select the 3D object and then slap on an image on top of it. It sort of wraps around. It's like adding a sticker over a real world object. There you go. I can just call it a day because that's a texture for it. It's pretty good already. I don't have to do anything. And if we sort of like put it into our lighting, if we turn on the lights and camera, this is what it looks like without doing anything else, using the scene that we set up earlier with the lighting and the cameras and with the texture applied. It looks really good already. If it was just a flat image, it wouldn't have this sort of shadow and sort of lighting, but it was sort of like pushed out because we did some modeling there. Now, let's do something similar to the bike computer. So this one, it doesn't have a texture. It doesn't have like a fancy image on the actual 3D model. So let's actually do some old school, well, not old school, traditional 3D modeling with this one. Let's actually give this a proper material. And what's cool about 3D modeling is you can use whatever material you want. This is pretty boring. I just chose like a black material, but in another situation, you could make this out of leather. Just change the outside to use a leather texture if you really wanted to. Or you could make it out of wood. I just chose plastic because that's what the bike computers are sort of made out of. I tried my best. I actually tried to study like what does it look like in certain lighting, and I tried to recreate the texture of it inside Blender. But that's just too much time finessing detail over black plastic, so it just looks like a black plastic object. So I decided to spruce it up a bit. Let's give it a screen. So that looks interesting. I used the same technique that I did for the disk and slapped an image inside the screen itself instead of having to draw this in Blender. So it's actually an object with two different textures, the black plastic and an image that sort of serves as the screen. And then if we put this thing over the purple circle that we had earlier, it's starting to take shape. You can see the 3D object, because it's extruded, has a bit of nice shadow there. We're using the statistic grafting at the background. We've got our cheeky lineup of the GPS track. And there's one object missing, and that's the arrow. For the arrow, what I did was I gave it a metal sort of texture. Just turned into this silver thing. So I suppose if I move the lighting around, it would have a bit of shine. But I left it as is because I wanted to keep the icon simple. And that's actually quite important. Sure, you've got this playground of 3D objects and you could throw all the textures you want. But remember, your job is still, as an icon designer, to keep it as clean and as simple as possible. So it's just adding that little bit of extra detail where necessary. And that's what it looks like. In order to sort of make it pop a bit more, I decided to add a bit more extra lights in the scene. It's a bit like having a bit more spotlights this way onto the scene. So what I did was I added one more light down here and then gave it like a glow. So it kind of gives it a bit more depth. The last and one of the most important things is actually getting your thing outside of Blender, getting your 3D object back into the 2D world. So what I do is I render it through using Blender. So I hit the render tool, and the output looks like this. Looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. I can adjust the lighting if needed. And what's really cool about 3D, doing icons in 3D, rather than just doing it all, like recreating the shadows in your design tool, is that if let's say I'm the client and I said, hey, I don't like the way the light is up there. Can you make the light just come from here instead, so the shadow's that way? It would take me a whole day to redraw it all inside the design tool I've got. But because it's Blender, I just take the light bulb, move it down here, and hit render. Much quicker. So what I then do is I take this out of Blender, chuck it into your design tool of choice. Here's Sketch, and I have Apple's template for the watchOS icon. So all I have to do is just drop it into their template and hit export. And that's it. That's the finished icon. And yeah, that's how you design 3D icons. I guess we have question time after this.
Well, what were you going to do with this?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Okay, so one more thing, I guess, in the style of Apple. This book came out. I got published, one of my icons that I worked on got published in this book, which I'm really happy about. What's really funny though is, if you find it in bookstores, that's the icon I designed, which is awesome. But if you look closely, they spelled my name wrong. It's C-A-L-O-S, so I guess it's not me, some guy named Carlos is in here.
Do you want to show the online audience as well? Just
Oh.
shuffle across.
Oh yeah, sure. Here's the book. And here is the icon. And if you, I guess I could use this to show the misspelling.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, if we can. Oh yeah, good job, Kalos.
Nice.
Yeah,
Question time.
yeah, all right.
Any questions?
I have a question and a comment. My comment is more like Carlos is the name you misspelled rather than Melagrito. That's it.
I'm very impressed by that.
Very
Yes,
strange.
Exactly.
I don't know if you mentioned earlier, which app was it that the icon that you did there? Which app
Oh,
was that
that's
for?
right. So the app is called RideStats. Developers right here if you have any questions. Yeah, it was an amazing opportunity because we got to do not just the watchOS icon, but a whole bunch of other icons as well.
So I think the last slide answered my question already, but while you were creating the objects and putting them into 3D space, did you always have a viewport open that showed you the 2D flat icon, for lack of a better term, so that you would see exactly what it would look like on 2D or at all times? Or did you have to switch between the 3D scene and the 2D results back and forth? Or did you have that in real time, basically?
That's a really good question. Yes. Is it possible to get the slides back up? So I customized, so what you're looking at here is a custom Blender setup that I have, where I've got 3 windows. I've got the modeling that I'm working on there, and then over there. I've got like the textures here. It's actually swapped. That's supposed to have textures, and this is the modeling. And I've got the preview that you're talking about here. So it's sort of, so I can sort of see and play around with the lighting, see if it's working better. And that's actually how I decided to add one more light into the scene, because it wasn't giving enough color. So yes, I do have a preview.
So you work in that top left quadrant, and then the 2 others are just like read-only. You just look at them.
Correct.
Then you can-
Yeah.
Do you have to consider like what it looks like in monochrome at all, or
Ooh.
like accessibility, like sort of color blindness in it? Yeah, dark mode. Yeah, another good one.
I will put the caveat that this is pre-iOS 18, so no dark mode. Monochrome, technically yes. The first version of this, if we go back to the concepts, was monochrome. So
Nice.
I have to scroll all the way back, sorry. But yeah, I always start with making sure it stands out without color first. So that way we're not relying on color too much. So that everything here becomes a bonus to look like this.
Question, any thoughts about actually turning it into a real 3D object? I know the developer of the app plays with 3D stuff, so any thoughts of actually turning it into a real, so you actually can get a real icon that you can hold in your hand? And
That'd be fun. Yeah, that'd be cool. Maybe.
Hi. Was it much of a conscious decision to make an icon that can be more than one thing? Like when you're sort of talking about it being a graph, my brain didn't go there at all. Like my brain went straight to that's a GPS signal. Like, did you sort of find that a lot of people pick one or the other? Or, you know, like when they're sort of like interpreting the icon?
Yeah, no, I didn't think about it that way. It's funny
got
you
another
say
answer.
that there are different ways to interpret the icon, but I don't know, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, like that is exactly the thing. It's not only a graph, it is a cycling route as well. So there is definitely that duality to it, and it's really well done.
Any other questions?
Is there such a thing as too much 3D? Can you overdo
yes,
it?
actually, yeah. I don't know, subject to taste, but you might end up with something that looks like the Find My app from way back then, if you go back to Skio. I've never really tested that bound before, but that would be fun. Yeah.
One more question.
Have you got some future plan to do some dynamic icon, for example, like the arrow can pointing to a certain angle?
I don't have it here, but I did. So maybe download. Maybe is it in the app already? Yeah, download the app, and you'll see that one of the loading screens is actually this. It's obscured, but this bicycle. The wheels move in the loading. So if you're waiting for the app to load, the bicycle wheels actually move. There's like a little thing that spins. So yeah, I do some animation as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Carlos.
No worries. Extra shameless plug.
Okay, go for
If you're looking
Get
for
in the camera.
more, if you're looking for more work like that, I'm open to helping out. Launching this thing called Decade. Just visit the website and learn more.
Awesome.
So, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Carlos. Next up, we've got Alex Smith.
Alrighty, g'day. My name's Alex. Thanks for sticking around and listening to a Dumbo speak. Thanks for Pat for inviting me. yeah, I created this lovely little thing called Slate. So I thought I'd do a quick little setup and get it going so you know what I'm talking about before we get into anything further. But it is a LED panel, basically for sort of like for creators, videographers, photographers, makeup artists, tattoo artists, absolutely anyone. A whole bunch of magnets in the back. It was sort of like bespoke designed, a whole bunch of LEDs in the front. So magnetic plate into there, and then we can just chuck it onto a stand, like so. I feel like I'm doing an infomercial here. There we go. Hopefully that's strong enough there. And then all powered by USB-C. So you can just use like a power bank or any sort of like laptop charger or anything like that. And then you're good to go. We want to sort of have a magnetic ecosystem, so you can sort of have a diffuser that just pops on the front as well. Easy to sort of move around. And there we go. That's sort of the whole gist of what I wanted to do. So let me give you the whole story of how we got here by sharing the early Alex lore. Never really cared about school that much. I really like music, and I feel like I was introduced to Tupac when I was like 5 or 6, and I heard him swearing in songs, and my mind was like, I didn't know you could swear in music. And I feel like that was the first inception of like, you can do things differently, and that's cool, or that can be cool. So yeah, always sort of took photos. My dad was a photographer / teacher as well, so I'd always had a camera in my hand. And I really liked sort of breaking things and seeing how things worked and taking out batteries and sort of trying to make sure, things could work without cases and things like that. And then that's me, my little getting rad in Toltronga in Norway, but always loved to sort of travel and everything like that. I feel like the easiest way to describe who I am is through my journey through gaming. So it started with I was talking to my old man, and he said our first computer was an Apple IIe. So I thought that would be appropriate for an Apple speech. But then I remember the Apple II GS, I feel like, which I think is the one that I've got there. Playing a whole bunch of the Sierra games. I sort of felt like I'd wait to gauge the audience age to sort of see how deep I can jump into this. But yeah, that was sort of like the Mortal Kombat, and there was a game called Police Quest 4 where they incorporated a whole bunch of photos into graphics. And that was just another thing where I was like, oh wow, like you can actually do that and it's cool. I felt like that kind of got me excited about what you could actually achieve in something that's, normally just sort of like blocky graphics. And then, yeah, turned into Sega Master System, Alex the Kid in Shinobi World, Prince of Persia, all that sort of stuff. Then going on to Theme Hospital, Roller Coaster Tycoon, in the sort of the early Pentium phases, going away from Apple, sorry. Twinton's Odyssey, all that kind of stuff. And it's really interesting, like when I was sort of putting this together, looking back on the things that I enjoy about business, so much of it goes back to the games that I enjoyed and like the things that I learnt through various games, which I thought was quite introspectively interesting. Then we got into the internet era with the old 56K modem. My old man, again, was sort of like massively into technology, so we were one of the first people to have cable internet, which meant Napster was really good. So I was sort of like the go-to guy for all things music at our high school that Pat and I both attended. And yeah, I remember there was a LAN back then when you had to hook up your computers with cables. That was at Colonial Stadium, or Telstra Dome back then, where it was like 1,000 people all came and hooked their computers in. It was quite interesting. But yeah, very, very into the whole Counter-Strike and Warcraft scene. That definitely ate up a couple hours of my life. Then post-high school, sort of played in a couple of bands, did a whole bunch of music to it and all that kind of stuff. And there was just a demand for rehearsal space and sort of creative space in Melbourne. There was just like every place smelled like a pub and, like sort of sticky carpet, beer and toilets and stuff like that. So I just wanted to make a space that was sort of clear, nice and easy, straightforward and sort of simple. So I started Aesthetic Studios, which was, again, around the corner from where Pat and I went to high school, which was cool. And that was awesome. It was just basically 4 rooms, a creative space for bands, for photography, gallery space, TV shows. We worked with The Voice, like The Bachelor, a whole bunch of like cycling shows for SBS, short films. Yeah, it's really cool. It sort of like exposed me to a lot of different creative sort of spaces. And then again, being a photographer, doing video work and everything like that, that just sort of put me in the right scenario to sort of be exposed to a lot of people that needed photographers and needed videographers. And that sort of, that took me around the world, down to sort of Patagonia, up to Iceland, New York. And one thing that I never liked about traveling, or sort of like, I just didn't like setting up gear. Like I sort of wanted to be as minimal and sort of like lightweight as sort of possible. And I think that sort of came into me not liking to pay for things as well. So I look at, so like this top corner here, where I'm doing some terrible gang signs, that's just a slider. So that's just basically there to sort of have your camera just go from left to right to sort of, create a real simple sliding image. And those things were sort of like around $1,000 for sort of like an entry-level one. And my DIY brain was just sort of like, I reckon I can make that pretty easy. So the place next door was, they made doors and curtains. So I sort of said, what can you do? What do you got there? And he had a whole bunch of like curtain bearings. So the wheels are the upside down things that curtains go to left and right on. And then the curtain rods and a bit of wood. And there you go. I've got a slider for probably 2 hours and like $10 worth of gear. And it was cool. It did the job. And then that turned into me designing a guitar, just because the guitar that I was using, it was really heavy. And then being on stage and sort of being quite active on stage, I'd sort of like throw it around a fair bit, so I just needed something lighter. So I built a guitar with my old man. And that was fun. That was sort of, like my first dive into electronics and sort of understanding going from like a concept all the way through to an actual product that I was making things with and actually taking around the country and sort of playing in front of thousands of people and stuff like that with, which was cool. It was really, really fun. And also at the studio, I'm not sure if I've got that in there now, but I also started making, I spent a couple months in China creating just leads, guitar leads, guitar picks, microphone leads, anything like that, anything that people just sort of break often. I just wanted to have something that was just of a really good quality that people could buy at a really good price and then just buy once and then hopefully not have to buy for a long time. And I think that was probably my first dive into the manufacturing sort of world as well, which was fun. And then, so you have to excuse the jumping around. I've brought the wrong laptop. I've left mine at home and brought my girlfriend's, which is very fun. But yeah, we moved up to Beechworth, which is where I'm living now, which is sort of 2.5 hours north in basically the border of Victoria and New South Wales. And another family just bought this 160-year-old brewery, which, are you guys familiar with Bilsons? Have you seen Bilsons anywhere? No? They just do a bunch of like cordials and sort of ready premix vodkas and things like that. But it's a 160-year-old building, and I was documenting the process of just sort of, modernizing it, getting this new family in there, updating everything, and making it a lot more work safe than the standards in 1860. And yeah, that's where the idea was born for Slight. I was shooting in the, what is now the whiskey cellar. Had no electricity, and I was just sort of like, why can't my lighting be powered by the thing that powers my laptop? And it was just sort of like, I know USB-C can put out at least 80 watts. A lot of the lights that I was using around 50 or 60 watts, so why isn't that a thing yet? And so I tried to do some research, and it was the kind of thing where it's just like, surely there's a reason why no one's used that technology together, but couldn't find a reason. Asked a couple of sort of like engineers and things like that said, no, it's not possible, just off the top of their heads and all that sort of stuff, but I kind of felt like, I feel like it should be possible. Like it didn't really sound like there was anything that made me go, nah, that's a deal breaker. So ended up with these very crude prototypes down here. This one a lot more crude than that one. But it was proof of concept. Like we did it. We sort of wired it together. I hate soldering, but we soldered it together. We worked out a language where USB-C can be basically converted into power that the LED strips can actually understand and work efficiently. And then we're sort of like, cool, this is something that I can actually use. And then I basically was having lunch with a friend, and I was just really psyched that I'd made this thing that I was proud of. And he's like, well, if it's useful for you, maybe it's useful for other people. Have you thought about turning it into an actual sort of business? And then we thought, sure, why not? Let's sort of give it a go. And then started building a team around that. And it was really interesting. Like I think that sort of goes back to my enjoyment of the theme park and theme hospital games and Roller Coaster Tycoon. I really, really enjoyed building the team. And I felt like it was really important, as hippie as it sort of sounds like, just getting the right vibe from the right people. And I think that was sort of another thing that I learnt from aesthetic studios, is that like you can't fake that authenticity or honesty. And it's sort of like the people that just love designing, the people that love designing, you know, like icons and everything like that, like you can't sort of deny that. And that's all I sort of wanted to do when we were building a team. Like we're sort of, you know, the industrial designers, and that was sort of the first cab off the rank. And it was really interesting. Like you'd sort of walk into one office and there'd just be their, you know, wall of fame that they're sort of like impressing you with as you walk in, expecting you to sort of be wowed and impressed by medical devices and all these sort of stuff, which were very impressive. But yeah, it was just sort of, I wanted to find someone that was just passionate about design and understood what we wanted to do. And we found that with Neela at Vert up in Sydney. And yeah, that sort of first meeting was really, really cool. It was the kind of thing where there's also Andrew, who's the CEO, was just having a chat for the first time, and he got out a napkin and instantly just started sketching away. And it was just like, cool, he gets it. You know, like the ideas are already flowing, all about that kind of energy. So yeah, ended up working with them, who sort of have a manufacturing, not partner, but sort of person that I'm already working with. And he's just another massive nerd like myself and loves technology, loves cutting edge kind of stuff. So we got along like a house on fire, and yeah, started sort of prototyping and sort of really seeing what this could actually sort of turn into. And it was super exciting. Like I still remember getting the first brief that we've got, you know, like official, hey, this is what Slight can actually look like. And I think we've got, yeah, some of the concepts from here, but I was just like so impressed by what this idea from, you know, going back a couple of slides to that, like whatever that little board is, to, you know, something as clean and sleek as that. Even just as a first round, it was just so impressive. And I just sort of get that nerd chill sort of just thinking about how cool that was. And then even, you know, like new ideas of just sort of sharing it with different people from different perspectives, you know, like what they see from it. And, you know, like even the ability to stack, you know, like that, I never really cared about the ability to stack until she showed me that photo. And I was like, oh, cool. You know, if we can make them stack, why not? Yeah, and that was really cool. Like that was sort of the journey there, getting it designed, going back and forth with a whole bunch of prototypes, being super meticulous with absolutely every aspect of it. You know, the name Slight, it sort of implies, you know, thin, slight in size and all that kind of stuff. So we were very sort of particular on being the thinnest, most powerful light that you can take with you anywhere. You know, slide in your backpack alongside your laptop, jump on a plane and, you know, be set up in as quickly as you saw at the start there. So yeah, it was cool. It was really, really fun. An awesome process there. And then also sort of working with, you know, like we obviously wanted to have the app designed alongside with it, just to be as simple and straightforward as it can be. So people can, you know, like change the, well, actually that's kind of boring. But you can change the colors, you can change the brightness, all that kind of stuff via the app. There's a thing called a color picker where I can sort of take a photo of your blue shirt and it'll represent the color there. So if you're working with brands like Starbucks, you can get the Starbucks green just by taking a photo of it and all that kind of thing. Anything that can make your workload smaller and quicker, that's, you know, that was our sort of priority with Slight. Yeah, so this was literally the last time I was on stage, was accepting the Good Design of the Year Best in Class for Consumer Electronics Award, which was really, really cool, jumping up in front of 400 people that had designed like cancer-fighting treatment, and I was kind of like, oh, got a light, makes you nice. That was awesome. It was really, really fun. And we decided to do a Kickstarter campaign, which was its own beast within itself. And we ended up raising $100,000 on the first day, and then finished on just over $300,000. And then raised another $75,000 over the next like 6 months in sort of like the post-campaign things. And that was awesome. It was very humbling. Like it was kind of like watching your first kid go off to school for the first time. I was like, I hope people care. Like, I hope people like it. And people seem to like it, so it was really cool. Where are we at? Basically, we wanted to do the Kickstarter to fund manufacturing, just because everything is expensive. And we're also doing it at quite a fun time. So this is just post-COVID, and there was the chip shortage, there was the silicon shortage, there was wars, there was COVID, there was constantly opening and closing and everything like that. It was amazing just sort of learning about the logistics of getting everything into the same spot, and you know how many things could go wrong, will go wrong. And you know, like a big thing on Kickstarter. Is everyone sort of familiar with Kickstarter crowdfunding? You know, like they're sort of, the biggest fear is that people aren't going to get what they pay for, or you're not going to deliver. It's a scam. So anytime we had a delay, we're like, oh, cool. Like everyone, scam. So we really have to sort of, get really good at putting out fires and sort of saying, hey, this is, it's a real thing. I'm not doing a runner with your 300 grand. We appreciate it, but you're in COVID lockdown, we're in COVID lockdown, chill. And that was good. So we ended up delivering 6 months late, which is never fun, but again, huge learning curve for someone that's never manufactured at this sort of level, having this many moving parts, and working with magnets. These are the worst things in the world to work with. So the top left corner are sort of like the magnets that are in the back here. So so there's 7 little discs in there, and trying to put them in at the same time when we're sort of like prototyping to sort of make sure that it's the right strength and everything like that, they would just click together and then be impossible to get removed. And that'd spark and like cause fires, and it was terrible. But like we wanted to be able to make sure that was in there and then sort of not going to go anywhere, not going to do anything. So it's like a very, very big critical part of the whole process, but yeah, it was never fun. Quite annoying, but one of the main manufacturing issues that we went into was just in the thinness. Like we wanted to stick to being 14 millimeters thin. We wanted to be the thinnest light that, like literally as thick as your laptop. And that was sort of very important to the messaging and why I wanted this light to exist in the first place. But then there was a whole bunch of issues in sort of like the heat that the manufacturing, like the plastic sort of goes into. So then, and then talking about extrusion and all that sort of fun stuff in Blender. Yeah, like that sort of probably pushed us back 2 or 3 months just in sort of figuring out how to make sure the plastic looks premium, but then also is, like rigid enough, but then also thin. So that was a good little battle there, but we got through it. And again, like we're learning with the manufacturer who's never had to manufacture plastic so thin to be rigid, but then still premium. And it was great. It was, like everyone was sort of growing together. It was beautiful. Where are we up to now? So these are going to be very boring slides now. But yeah, so we shipped and we were 6 months late. Everyone was super happy though, except for one person that thought there was an internal battery and called us liars and all that sort of stuff, even though we're very clear with our language that there is no internal battery. But that is people on the internet. And yeah, the feedback that you get from Kickstarter is awesome. We sort of sent out a bunch of surveys just saying, what do you like about it? What don't you like about it? Why did you buy it? What are you going to use it for? And that was a massive learning phase for us, just because it was super interesting seeing that makeup artists were probably our second biggest audience. Behind sort of like photographers / videographer, content creator, makeup artists, then tattoo artists. And then there was a guy from Ocean Grove that takes photos with like a 160-year-old camera, and he only uses like the blue light. So on slides, there's a whole bunch, there's like 16 million colors as well. So you can kind of, go through all that sort of stuff. There you go, 16 million, fantastic. So he shoots exclusively in blue light because that's what the sheets of metal that he prints onto on this like massive old sort of like box camera, the blue light responds to. So it was just cool. There's just sort of like so many different uses for, this idea for a light that I just wanted, that was just born out of, I just didn't want to set up. Like I just wanted to be quicker. Like I hated, like there was times when I wouldn't want to do a whole bunch of work for, certain clients and things like that, just because I know I have to bring like 120 centimeters softbox, massive C-stand that's, going to take another 5 minutes to sort of set up and then calibrate and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted a quick and easy thing to be set up in seconds. And you can set that up in 24 seconds, which is awesome. Yeah, that's been a blast. Like we officially opened for business last May. So we've just had our first year, which was awesome. Sold out of our first sort of stock. Got our second run now that's going into production now. Doing a whole bunch of new products, which is really exciting. Going into sort of like more power banks and even more sort of portable lighting for people to use. Again, leaning into the success we've seen in the makeup world. Like we had slights at the Met Gala this year, which was awesome. At the Olympics now, we've got slights. It's cool. It's just cool seeing this idea that I had, just being used across the world. It's really, really cool. Yeah. And I suppose what's next, I suppose why I'm here in the sort of first place was that We want to continue to build out the app, which was sort of like, we had a really good experience with building it out. It was a very sort of, I feel like we've got an intimate knowledge of every single area of Slight. Just because I've always had the philosophy of like, do it yourself until you can't do it yourself, and then get in touch with people that the experts in the industry. And yeah, we want to sort of really lean into the functionality of the app and the ease of use of just sort of setting up more things at once, having more lights, more products on the sort of, you know, the Slight sphere, and sort of just expand out into a whole bunch of other things that just make creatives' lives a bit easier, quicker, less painful. And that's where we're heading in 2024, 2025. And that's about it. Any questions?
Questions, anyone? Or?
Thank you. How long it was from like the idea you had until today? Like,
until today? So it was about 2021 I had the idea. And then it was about 18 months until we hit the Kickstarter. And then, yeah, Kickstarter until here has been a little over sort of, 2 years. So it's been a long road, but we've sort of thrown ourselves in the deep end and learnt a lot. But that's cool. That's, like, again, I feel like when we're working with people that are at the top of their game for everything. So having them sort of, lead and talk from experience has just been super invaluable. Yeah.
Sorry, are you worried about copycats at all? Has it happened?
Definitely. It's, at the end of the day, it's a light. And that, I think, comes down to the languaging and the branding as well. Like we sort of, it's the whole ecosystem and the experience of it's just an easy, all-in-one, no-brainer, buy this once, you don't have to worry about it ever again. That's the sort of the approach that we're sort of taking. And yeah, like we've been on like AliExpress and things like that. There's, like the Slight with an extra E on the end and things like that. You'd send them an email saying, hey, I'm Alex from Slight, stop it. And they'll take it down. But yeah, it's sort of like the way that we're setting ourselves aside is just the quality. The LEDs that are in there are completely bespoke, so no one else can use those. And I suppose the way that light is judged, so these lights here are probably around what's called like a 70 CRI. So 100 CRI is the sun, and then like your sort of fluorescence in your kitchen and things like that around sort of 50 or 60, and ours are 98.9. So we're like almost the sun, which is that super accurate. And we've sort of put a lot of time into calibrating the LEDs and how flattering they are. Because like people just want to put up a light and it's kind of like a IRL filter, like rather than doing it on TikTok or whatever. Seeing how good you look on camera while you're shooting the content sort of creates more confidence in yourself as well. So it's that sort of experience that comes with, like we've got a whole bunch of educational content as well, working with a whole bunch of, influencers and things that are just, at the top of their game and just sharing sort of valuable information. And if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for, people that are listening along. So that's sort of what we're really leaning into. Like the community aspect of it is mega important. And also probably the most fun thing about it. Just seeing what people are creating is, been a blast. Yep.
How big is your team? And second to that is how many software developers versus people on the hardware and marketing and sales side of things?
So I suppose we've always had, there's been two of us that sort of myself and two others that started the company and currently in the process of sort of basically becoming all by myself. So for the past sort of year, I've been doing absolutely everything by myself. Yeah, so sort of like buying those sort of shares as we sort of speak, which is nice and fun and nice and stressful. But the team, so I've got a software engineer in Brisbane who is basically responsible for a whole bunch of like the hardware. And then he also sort of worked in conjunction with our manufacturer in Sydney, who's then got a team in sort of Taiwan and China. And then everyone just sort of, does everything. It's sort of like quite a circular thing there. So we've got like the one designer in Sydney, so working with Neela. She's not at Vert anymore, but working with Neela. I'm doing all the marketing ourselves with my partner who's sort of helping out. Doing all the content, like doing all the filming, all the sort of UGC stuff. We work with a lot of different creators, so it's forever a revolving group of people. But at the core, it's just sort of myself and I suppose my girlfriend. But again, like this is sort of we're looking at doing another Kickstarter later in the year, and I think that's when we sort of will really need to push out and sort of grow the team and have sort of like more of a full-time app crew and things like that.
And so that one Brisbane dev is doing firmware, hardware, and the iOS app and Android?
No. So we did have the app was built by...
Who is this? That's incredible.
Yeah, to be honest, he's a wizard, and he's really, really cool. That was one challenge with the language in which the app talks to the hardware was quite challenging. So there's sort of like, there's 5 channels on the app, on the slide, which is sort of like the white, and then the RGB LEDs. So that kind of like language needed to be defined. And that was sort of like, everyone sort of worked really well together. There was a team called Taptitude that we built the app with. And it was awesome. Everyone sort of got along. Everyone wanted what's best for Slight, which is cool. And I think that was sort of the part that I enjoyed, was making sure, like the app people want the app to be the best. The engineers want the engineering to be the best. The designers want the design to be, like the sleekest. So I think it was just about managing expectations and just sort of like making sure everyone's doing their best for the collective Slight. But yeah, the team, so I think there was a lead developer for iOS and a lead for Android. And then just like another sort of like coordinator who would sort of, be in all the meetings and everything like that. But yeah, it was a fun, pretty smooth process. But there's a whole bunch of features, like it breaks my heart at the moment that there's special effects on the Slight. And you can change the brightness and the frequency of, say, how fast the colors are strobing or anything like that. But you can't change that on the app yet. So that breaks my heart that like the, 12 megabytes of space on there is doing more computing power than the app. So yeah, that's what we're sort of, looking to sort of expand out there with the terms of functionality within the app and how that sort of works in sort of, creating more creative endeavors and just sort of seeing how people put it to work. Yeah.
I have comment and a question.
Sure.
Comment, you're in the right place to get the app fixed.
Very good. I believe so.
He's coming to coding night.
iOS at least.
Question for the audience. Like an hour ago, who thought lighting was just like a solved thing? I did. I think you're all lying. I assumed lighting was just like a solved thing and there was no space for innovation in that area.
Oh, for sure.
But obviously there is. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, definitely. It's really interesting. It's kind of, it's hard to, like, people don't know how important light is when it comes to photography or videography. But then it's the kind of thing where it's like, as soon as they're in front of a light and they can see the difference that good lighting makes, you're like, I get it. But, like, it's very hard to communicate that problem. And that's definitely a very big sort of marketing challenge. But yeah, once you're in front of a good light, you always want to be in front of a good light. And even, like small business, taking, Zoom calls and things like that. Just people looking their best in front of their computer. Yeah.
I just want last one. Any like sneak peeks on what's to come? Like,
I'd love to, but
can't reveal anything.
Have to get some NDA signed there.
Okay.
We're actually, it's really cool. Like we're working with, it was cutting edge at the time. We're using the same sort of like heat sink that cools the LEDs that like Huawei use in their phones. That was sort of like a super rare alloy that not many people were using at the time. And that was just awesome. Like that was sort of like a really cool, nerdy sort of thing that we couldn't release yet. And like the things that we're doing now are the same sort of thing. And I suppose talking back to, copycats and things, yeah, it's weird. Like I kind of, the first sort of 6 months of creating Slight, trying to gather information without exposing the idea was really difficult. Like I kind of had to learn how to dance around saying exactly what I want without sort of sharing exactly what I'm doing. And I have to do that again now. But it's cool. Yeah, we're very excited. It's another thing where it's just sort of like the USB-C, no one was doing that at the time, and we're just sort of doing something that no one's doing at the time. So yeah, it's gonna be cool. Expanding it out, it's gonna be fun. Sure. What's it cost? So these are, what are they? They're $3.99 Australian. So it's like $2.50 USD or something like that. But the next products we're going to be doing, without revealing any more, are going to be $99 US. As sort of like, this is going to be the workhorse, sort of like, powerful one. And then everything is just going to roll down from there. It's like, if it's good enough for the pros, it'll be good enough for everyone else that's sort of, taking photos for their business or anything like that.
What's that compared to other like devices?
So it's pretty much like right in the middle. It's sort of like, it's the cheapest, best light, if that makes sense. Like it's kind of like, you can get panels for like $100 that are a lot less powerful and way worse quality and like cheaper build and everything like that. But then there's other lights that are up to, you know, like $1,200. There's a $3,000 light that's, you know, basically the same sort of size, a little bit bigger, but, you know, twice as powerful. So it's kind of like in there about 3,500. So it's kind of like it's a premium. I just wanted it, you know, again, going back to why I wanted it to exist. It's sort of like, it's a price that I would pay for something I can rely on day in, day out. And I think that, you know, that's been good for the makeup artists and photographers, makeup artists and tattooists that literally use it every day to make their living, sort of thing. So the fact that they're able to use it every single day, not having to worry about color shift in the LEDs or, you know, it not turning on and things like that, it's cool. Like I think it's a good price point. Of course, I want it to be cheaper, but things are expensive.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks heaps, Alex.
Cool. Thank you. Should have got the stand first.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. We're live. We're live. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Pablo. Thank you, Carlos or Carlo, whichever you prefer, and Alex. They were awesome presentations. Just a reminder about the other events this month. Coding night on the 21st with the thing Luke said about the career stuff. Yep. Social night on the 27th of August. And thank you to our sponsors, Mantle Group and REA Group. Thank you very much. A clap. Yep. And now we're going to go to the social time at the Mitre Tavern if you're interested. Thank you, everyone. Awesome.
Thank you.